Have you ever wanted some mouth-wateringly tender baby back ribs, but you don't want to spend 4 or 5 hours making them? Well, today I'll show you the fastest way to make fall off the bone tender ribs. Not only is it so tender you're sure to rack up points with the family, but we'll have this ready to eat in about an hour. This method will work great with any kind of ribs, but today I'll be using a rack of these baby back ribs. Now, this is going to be nobody's favorite part, but unfortunately ribs like this come from the store with this annoying membrane still attached to the back. You want to use a small knife or your finger to try and get under there and just lift that up a little, and we want to remove that completely from the back of our ribs. Not only is it kind of rubbery and unpleasant if you bite into it, but it's also going to block the seasoning from being able to penetrate the meat on this side of the ribs, so you definitely want to remove that. If you're lucky, it'll come off all in one piece like that. Now that we've pulled that off, let's go ahead and make a simple spice rub. This can be as simple or as complicated as we want, the simplest being just salt and pepper, which I highly recommend, by the way. But for this Carolina style rub, we're going to want a couple tablespoons of chili powder along with onion powder and garlic powder. You can see I don't really measure these, just aim for about 2 tablespoons or so. Next up, we want about 2 teaspoons of powdered ginger. That just goes great with pork. And as the main foundation of our red rub, I'm using about a 1/4 cup or so of smoked paprika. And because I don't plan on grilling these, I highly recommend the smoked paprika. It at least helps get a little bit of smokiness into our ribs. Next, we want about a teaspoon of salt per pound of meat. I just kind of estimate this, but that doesn't look like quite enough. Let's add just a little more. And last but not least, some fresh cracked black pepper to taste. Now, I know a lot of people put sugar into their spice rubs, but I've never found that to add anything to the finished product except excess calories, especially if you're planning to put a barbecue sauce on top anyway. Those usually contain a ton of sugar. So if you were planning on searing your ribs off without any sauce in it, then yes, maybe you would want to add a 1/4 cup of sugar in here to get that caramelization on the final product. But if you're planning on using a barbecue sauce, I would leave out the sugar in the dry rub. Anyway, now that that's finished, we just want to apply this generously all over our meat. Which kind of put me in the mood to tell you guys a spicy joke, but in the end, I just didn't want to rub it in. Seriously though, do rub it in. It's called a spice rub, not a spice sprinkle it there and hope for the best. We want this to cover every crack and crevice, so really rub it in there. Now, the next step might seem a little strange, but I highly recommend letting this sit for 5 or 10 minutes before you cook it. That gives the seasoning time to actually soak into the meat a little and will also hydrate the seasoning at the same time, causing more to stick. So it's a win-win. After 10 minutes, it'll be noticeably darker. And now we're officially ready to cook, but because we want these cooked fast, we're going to use the old trusty pressure cooker. I like just laying mine in like that rather than cutting it and kind of stacking it up, because if you stack it up, the stacks in the middle aren't going to cook the same as the stacks on the outside, but this way they will. The only other thing I'm going to add here is 1 cup of water, and that's pretty much just for the steam. We could try and get a little more flavor with apple juice or stock, but I don't really think you need to. Now we'll just slap a lid on here and make sure to check your steam valve. You'll need to move that to the closed position. Now, your pressure cooker is going to vary in terms of how to actually set the time, but for me, I just hit meat twice and then I can up the time. I'm doing a full 50 minutes on mine because my wife likes her ribs really falling off the bone, but for most of you, you should probably start at 35 or 40 and see how you like that first. Now, don't worry, these machines often have a warm-up period where it takes a couple of minutes for them to heat up and start making all kinds of cool steampunk noises. But don't fiddle with it, don't turn it off and on again, just leave it alone, it'll come up to temperature and your timer will start. But once it's done cooking, we can't simply pop the lid off of this thing. In fact, most modern models simply will not let you remove the lid at this point. First, you need to very carefully open the steam valve. Keep your hands away from that steam, it will burn you. Once the steam stops, our pressure should be equalized and we can just go ahead and remove the lid. And you'll see how tender these are. Even with my patented double tongs technique, I still couldn't get it out all in one piece. Whoops. Well, hey, that's okay. We'll put that back together on the pan. You could actually finish these on the grill to get some of that great smoky grill flavor, but I'm just going to be using the broiler today. It saves a whole bunch of time, and frankly, I don't know if I want to, use a whole chimney's worth of charcoal just for caramelizing a little bit of barbecue sauce. And even if I did, with how crazy tender these ribs are, that just wouldn't work. So once we're finished covering this in our favorite barbecue sauce, it's just off to one of the upper racks of our oven, where we're going to broil this on high for 5 to 10 minutes or until it gets nice and bubbly and crustified. Once we're satisfied with our level of crustification, we can just go ahead and pull these out. And we might want to give them at least 5 minutes to cool. Just look at that bubbling barbecue sauce. Oh yeah. But that's it, folks. Juicy, fork tender ribs in about an hour. I really hope you found this video useful. If you did, give me a thumbs up below and don't forget to subscribe and hit that little bell so you don't miss our future videos. This has been Graham with A Passion for Food.